Hello, I'm Kads, and welcome back to the free-to-play review. So today's topic is going to be all of the Halloween madness going on right now. We've got a new summon pool, we've got a new deck of fate, a midweek guaranteed, as well as some shard pulling events, so let's dive right into all of it. Starting things off, we do have the Nightmare summon pool, and we do not have a headline champion this go around. It is just featuring a bunch of champions from the Halloween-esque factions: Night Rev, Undead Hordes, Dark Elves, and Demon Spawn. Up for grabs, you have a pretty good mix of legendaries. Hefrak is a really solid nuker, more of a troll nuker, but nonetheless a good one. Morrigan, very useful for Ammies if you don't have her, if you didn't do her for fusion a couple years ago. Knock the Paralyzer, doesn't see that much play, but he is a pretty decent AoE poisoner with a little bit of CC. Rotos, of course, one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful single target damage dealer in the game. White Queen and Cora, very strong support champion. Duchess, even stronger support champion. Helicath, very solid damage dealer as well as support champion. Galvalax is the king of speed when it comes to poison explosion compositions. And then Theodore is a very solid support / speed running champion for dungeons. When it comes to the epics, Whisper, one of my favorite epics in the game for boss killing damage, absolutely decimates them. Rected Wrath, obviously really good for Hydra. Husk, good for Hydra. Allure, turn meter control goddess on the A1. Miscreated monster, pretty decent support. Gorgrab, decent Faction Wars champion. Seeker, very popular for Demon Lord clan boss. And then Magnar, one of the best HP based nuker for epics when it comes to that. Vogoth, very solid tank. So honestly, if you happen to get a free summon from the Sand Devil Turn Attack tournament, which is going to be the sole source for this one going around, you wouldn't go wrong with majority of the epics. I guess Ashma as well, Lady Mikage epic if you don't have her there. And then if you do happen to get one of the legendaries, you'd probably be pretty satisfied as well. Now that being said, you do only have a 6% chance to get a legendary, which is on par with a sacred chart, as we have seen as far as the precedent for summon pools as of late. And then the epics is of course 94%. These are going to cost 35 fragments per summon, and you can see here that I happen to have 35, which is just a carryover from previous iterations of events. And so even though I don't really plan to participate in this particular one, spoiler alert, I do have a free summon just because of that, but I am going to wait until presumably the champion chase starts this weekend for alongside the fusion for Gretel, Hag's Bane. Taking a look at the Sand Devil Turn Attack tournament, you can see that we do have the one free summon here all the way up at 6,300 points, and you have 3 days to complete this. So if those champions are of interest to you, then I behoove of you to participate in this event. As I mentioned, I am not, and I talked about that in yesterday's video, talking about why I'm doing more of the challenge tournaments over stuff like this, because an Immortal Soulstone is very nice, and it could yield a pretty high soul, especially during the boosted rates, but more likely than not, you're going to get a 3-star rare type of soul. And so it's just, I'd rather take the guaranteed result over the gamble on a good potential for a good result. And so for me, maxing out all of these challenge tournaments guarantees me that I'm going to get Eternal Soul coins, which I can convert into essence, which can help me buy from the soul merchant high tiers of blessings for my champions. And just as an example, as I mentioned yesterday as well, you can see here that partially thanks to the challenge tournaments, I have been able to secure 300 more Eternal Soul essence, which does mean that I can purchase the 6-star soul for my Harima whenever it comes back into the shop. And so again, I value the guaranteed return of getting soul coins, turning it into essence to max out my champions, versus hoping that I happen to get a 5 or 6-star soul for my Harima, for example, from an Immortal Soulstone. But of course, that's just my particular strategy in this instance. I do implore you guys to decide for yourselves what you want to do with your energy. I just know that I cannot for sure do both of the Turn Attack tournaments on top of the Sand Devil tournament, maxing both of them out. That would cost me a lot of gems, and I'm finally I've returned to being above 4,000 gems, which is the floor I like to stay above outside of emergencies. It's obviously I can go below it if need be, but I like to stay above 4,000 if possible. And so now that I'm just barely above it, I really would like to stay there and kind of push higher and higher, just so I have more and more buffer for things like this in the future, where if I was at 5,000 gems, then I'd probably be more inclined to max out both events, for example. I'd be more willing to do so. So yeah, Sand Devil Turn Attack tournament, if you're not spending your energy on anything else, then I do recommend you participate. You just might walk away with a pretty decent legendary and or a pretty decent epic champion. And since I do have my one free summon, I would love to get either a duplicate of Whisper, Rected Wrath, or Husk when it comes to the epics. And then if it came to legendaries, if I wanted to get a new one, then I would love to get a Duchess, because I don't have her. And if I was getting a duplicate, then a Rotos would be nice, because then I'd be able to empower my Rotos from 0 to +2. So that'd be pretty substantial for my account. The next order of business is the Halloween deck of Fate. We have a new set of 40 cards of pain, and I know a lot of people probably still have the bitter taste in their mouth from the Freya deck of Fate, but this one is a lot more, or a lot less, I should say, enticing, and the milestones are a little bit more reasonable than they were for that one, but they are still a little bit less than what we've seen historically in the past. But in this case, it is actually a champion chase, not a summon rush, so you are rewarded for the type of champion that you pull from any shard or any source, and not just pulling these specific shard types, so that's important to note. And then there's also the soulstone summoning aspect of it as well. So if we take a look at the rewards that you could get from Flip the Cards, there's nothing really that stands out to me, and so I think that most people probably aren't going to be incentivized to participate in this particular iteration of the deck of Fate. There's no gear, there's no champion. You might get some of the good rewards, but majority of those are going to be hidden behind the epic cards, of which there are only 7 in the deck of 40, which is a lot less than usual. Usually we see like a 9, 10 maybe or so, but there's a lot of common cards, which means you're going to walk away with a lot of like low tier chaos ore, a couple of potions, multi-battle, stuff like that, stuff that you really probably don't want. All the juicy stuff is going to be locked behind the rare and the epic cards. And again, this is a shard pulling thing with soulstone pulling. There's no 2x going on right now, but there is a progressive chance, and we'll talk about that in a little bit later. But yeah, there's no boosted rates for soulstone summoning, so this is probably not the best time to be pulling your soulstones. For anyone who is unfamiliar with the deck of Fate, you just kind of click the cards and flip them over, and if you happen to get 3 of a kind in a row, then you have a chance to roll on each of these tables for each of those respective rarities. And the pinning feature is back. They held out on this feature for the Freya deck of Fate, which is another big bummer for that event, but this time it's back in action. So for example, if you do pin a rare card, you'll have to wait until you pull 2 more rares, and you might pull commons or epics in between, but once you get 3 rares in a row, then you are guaranteed to roll on this table. Now, given the fact that there's only 7 epic cards, and if you were maxing out the deck of Fate, I'd probably recommend that you at least pin the epic card once, maybe twice, because you can only get 3 of a kind twice in a row anyways, and so that would probably be the strategy I would employ. But nonetheless, like I said, I think most people aren't going to be participating in this. And then just for a little bit of math here, you can look at the values in terms of getting the points for getting champions from any source. So that could be shards, it could be fragment summon champions who wanted to use that. Like if I wanted to fuse my Lady Mikage, for example, a mythical champion would be 14,000 points, or just about 4, or exactly 14 flips. And then if you happen to get void champions, it's a little bit better. And then the soulstone amounts are about 80% of what we would normally see from a deck of Fate. So this would be about 100 normally, this would be 1,000, this would be 5,000. And if you'd like to see these values in a more digestible format, let's hop over to the spreadsheet, which will be linked in the description box down below. And note that there are multiple tabs, so we are in the deck of Fate calculator tab, but the areas of focus today are going to be the soulstone summoning here, and we have those values. So if you wanted to get all 40 flips for some reason, it would take 500 mortals, 50 immortals, and 10 eternals. And then you also have the champion chase aspect, and these currency values are based on the averages of what you would get from pulling shards. So of course here, if you're super lucky, they're going to be higher. If you're super unlucky, they're going to be lower. But on average, it would take you, for example, 236 ancients in order to get all the way out to 40 cards. Primals would be 40, sacreds would be 25. Now voids, this is a little bit misleading because there is the guaranteed going on for Little Miss Annie, and once you get her on your 100th void shard, she would give you 7,000 points. So if we do the math, it would take you essentially all 100 voids of the guaranteed to get all 40 flips worth of credit, again assuming you get average rates on epics along the way. Now of course these values are in isolation, meaning that if you do a mix and match of soulstones and shards, then your values, or equivalent values, are going to be lower depending on your luck, of course. But the main point I want to drive home is that the champion chase aspect of it has a good amount of RNG in it, because it depends on what you get from the shards, and there's no boosted rates necessarily for those. There's no 2x going on right now, despite there being a progressive chance. So there's nothing helping you get higher rates or higher points on average. You're just having to deal with the base rates. And then for the soulstones, these are basically what you get. So this is more of a soulstone rush. So as I mentioned, probably the main incentive to go for the deck of Fate is if you were convinced that you wanted to go for Little Miss Annie. I think she's a pretty cool champion. She hits extremely hard for a single target damage dealer, even harder than Rhodos, who we know is like one of the top single target damage dealers in the game. But she kind of lacks a little bit of the utility to make her viable in the upper echelons of Arena. But for the average person, honestly, she can really put people into the grave, especially with Playdate here. Really hard, a really high multiplier on this ability, on top of her having a really high base attack that ignores a lot of defense. destroys max HP, and then it grants her Revive on Death, which is the change they made after the buff. And then the A2 here hits decently hard, but she gives herself increased attack. It also ignores 25% defense. Perfect Veil fills her turn meter, and then it hits an enemy 2 times, so you can bypass a UDK, for example. And then the A1's a triple hitter, a couple of debuffs that can land. But yeah, she's a pretty strong single target damage dealer. I think she'd be a big help to a lot of people. She's definitely fun in some PvE applications where Playdate can just kind of one-shot bosses, kind of like the Sigfrind before the Sigfrind, if you want to think of it that way. But, you know, is she worth 100 voids? Probably not. Generally speaking, like 100 voids to guarantee yourself a void legendary is a great deal, because on average it would take you 200 plus. Most people end up going all the way out to Mercy, even if you pull exclusively during 2x's, just because it's just hard to get void legendaries. So guaranteeing one in 100 is a good deal, but at the same time, because void shards are fairly precious, you kind of want the champion to be someone you really want. So if this was a Narcisse level champion, I don't think there'd be any question about people going for it, but because it's less so, I think a lot less people are going to be incentivized to go for it, myself included in that metric. I'm not that interested in her, but like if I had her, I'd probably use her just for all the fun and shenanigans she can get up to. And that's speaking from a person who has clearly 250 void shards. So I could most certainly do it. It wouldn't really make a dent into my void shard reserves. I'd still be able to pull for fusions or 2x's and anything going on like that. But it's more about, do I really want the champion? And then is it worth the amount of shards that they cost? But yeah, aside from that, there is also some progressive chance events going on for some certain champions. But honestly, I don't really think any of them are worthy of mentioning. There's no one like super S tier in anything. Like Sun Wukong, most of us should have him for free. That's probably the highlight. But anything else, it's not really necessary, but they would be nice to have. So again, I don't really anticipate a lot of people are going to be participating in the Deck of Fate. Let me know in the comment section down below if you are going to, or if you think more people will. But my suspicion is that a lot of people, there's just not enough incentive. There's no reason to do it. There's no boosted rates on the Soul Stones or on the Shards, and you're just getting stuck with a progressive chance event. But I think, you know, in my recommendations, like only if you have the voids and you really want Little Miss Annie, then again, on average, it'll probably take you the 100 voids to max out the Deck of Fate. So it'd just be kind of a nice bonus on top of getting the guaranteed champion. But I wouldn't really pursue the Deck of Fate in and of itself. So there you have it. That's going to be the free-to-play review of all of the Halloween madness going on right now, the Nightmare Summon Pool, as well as the Halloween Deck of Fate on top of the guaranteed and all of the crazy shard events going on. Do let me know in the comment section down below if you're going to be participating in either of these events. And I will note here at the end that technically speaking, you can still get the shards, or you get the fragments from the Sand Devil tournament and not claim them, and let the summon pool end before the tournament forces you to collect the rewards, and thus you can bank the 35 for the next summon pool, whatever it is. You won't have a choice then, but you can still earn the points and just save it for whatever the next one is. So that is always an option that people should consider if you don't happen to like the champions in this particular summon pool. I think this is a decent one that most people would want to try for, but considering the fact that the new Demon Spawn, a faction unity champion, is coming to the game in a few days, then maybe you'd want to bank some of these fragments for the next go around, which should be having the headline champion be the Demon Spawn champion. As always, if you did find this video helpful, then be sure to hit that like button down below. It really does help out the channel with the algorithm. And if you are enjoying the content on the channel, then feel free to hit that subscribe button down below for more content just like this one in the future. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.